I've got a pretty long history with the Atelier franchise over the past 6 years. There are a bunch of games I've really enjoyed playing on the go, Aisha, Rorona, Ryza, but my absolute favorite is Sophie. I was real excited that Sophie got another game all to herself instead of just being a side character in games like Fierce or Liddy. Here is my review of Atelier Sophie 2 for the Nintendo Switch. 2 takes place after the original Atelier Sophie, but before the rest of the Mystery Trilogy. Sophie and Plachta are adventuring and discover a gigantic magical tree. The two are sucked into a dimensional rift near it, and Sophie finds herself stranded in a dream world, an alternate dimension made up of people's dreams and ambitions. She then journeys around this new world in search of Plachta, all while meeting people old and new, including another alchemist named Plachta that is very different from the one she knows. I find the story pretty good overall. The slice of life bits aren't nearly as comical as in the original, and there is a big plot point about halfway through the game that I really thought was done poorly. Maybe not so much as the tropey stuff in Ryza 2, but definitely something I feel should have been done better. Now, the placement in the timeline is not outright stated, but it's worth noting that the Atelier tent is still in a prototype stage at this point of Sophie's journey, which would place this sometime after Sophie but before Fierce. Also, if it matters to you, there is no English dub in this game like there was in the original. Now onto gameplay. This is a turn-based RPG with gathering and alchemy elements thrown in. Like in previous games, you'll trek through 3D dungeons, fight enemies in turn-based combat, and grab a ton of materials from harvest points to take back to your base of operations and combine into new items through alchemy. The overall gameplay system is a bit of a mix between the original Atelier Sophie and what Ryza and Ryza 2 introduced. Battles and alchemy are a bit more like the Mystery Trilogy, but a lot of the exploration, map size, and quality of life improvements are closer to Ryza. We'll come back to that comparison many times throughout this review. Main progression is around a hub town. You've got your atelier, but a bunch of different areas around town with shops, side quests, and a bunch of NPCs with story events attached to them. Outside of the town, via the world map, you've got a bunch of dungeons that you can explore. Speaking of the world map, it is not dotted like the original Sophie. It's a screen for fast travel between the different dungeons and towns. A bit more enhanced than Ryza 2's system with not only fast travel to the dungeons themselves, but a lot more in the dungeon fast travel points you can unlock by finding big crystals and interacting with them. This makes it extremely convenient to have a full basket out in the field, go back to the atelier to drop the stuff off, and go back for the next story bit. Exploring the actual dungeons is also more like Ryza with much larger areas to run around and less linearity. Now, some areas later on do get close to that linear format, and it is true that this doesn't have many of the environmental interactions that Ryza had, like climbing and swimming, but the dungeons are quite large, especially when you throw in the weather change mechanic. This is really the big new feature for the series. You can charge weather stones with alchemy and use them in certain areas to alter the weather and state of a dungeon. A set of ancient ruins that are completely flooded by an ocean during the rain can be changed with a sunlight weather to completely dry up that ocean and unlock so many more areas for you to explore. It's essentially used to create bridges or open up paths to where you need to go for the next story bit, but when you change the weather, it's almost like the entire area changes to a different dungeon. Next, let's go into the alchemy and combat systems. Alchemy is much more like Sophie. Alchemy level requirements for crafting items are back. You've got a grid again for placing elements and chaining for better effects when crafting, though you do have the convenience of having an auto add feature that actually adds things in a pretty smart way, so the game can do that part for you. You also have multiple alchemists to use when crafting, each with their own alchemy levels and recipes that the other doesn't have. On recipes, the learning process is also much more like the mystery games. Each recipe has a requirement like hunting a certain monster, finding material, or simply progressing the story to a certain point. All of this is shown as part of a tree that unlocks as you get other recipes. It's pretty simple, especially with how user-friendly the recipe guide is. If you need a certain item that you've never found before, it will tell you what dungeons you can find it in. Now, combat. First of all, I was shocked at how seamless it is to start battles. No alternative arenas anymore. The moment you hit an enemy, a split second later, the background of the environment slightly changes and you're in a battle. With how many years I've been playing the series where it is always a separate arena, even in Ryza 2, having it go so seamlessly like this is amazing. But once you get into combat, Ryza fans will definitely see a difference. Fighting is strictly turn-based as opposed to the real-time style of those newer games. You can take as long as you want to choose a command, and each character has their own set of MP for skills instead of a shared one for the entire party. But there are lots of interactions and quality of life improvements. You got the standard defense mechanics, double skills can be done between characters, a new aura system with enemies makes you choose whether to attack with physical or magical attacks, and battle items have charges on them. It's not completely infinite like it is in Ryza, but far more user-friendly than in the original Mystery Trilogy. Combat is further enhanced by the ability system, which is a little similar to the skill tree from Ryza 2. You do challenges for each character to earn AP. These challenges could be just do alchemy with this character, fight this number of enemies, get super synthesis this many times. And you can use that AP to unlock passive skills, from stat increases to better quality material grabbing from different tools. This is also the key to unlocking a lot of each character's more powerful battle skills. Now all of this comes together pretty nice. Like the previous Atelier games, we have the standard 30 to 40 hour track depending on your difficulty preference and how much side content you do. But either way, you're going to get a lot of time out of this game. Next up is presentation. Visually, this game is very pretty. It's got the extra amount of depth and lighting that Ryza had, though the visuals do glitch up from time to time on the world map screen. It's not really breakable, but sometimes I would see this weird thing on the world map instead of the fog like you see here. But on the bright side, that weird vertical line glitch from Ryza 2's textures was not repeated in Sophie 2. Performance is also much better this time around with some great options that Gust gave us. We've got a graphical modifier in settings letting you swap between quality and performance modes, though I'll admit that the difference between these is very slight. You get a little bit less lag when going into loading sequences or battle, but you do see shorter load times with performance mode. And when it comes to performance, the frame rate is amazing. Those big dips that you got in Ryza later on in the game in handheld mode are completely gone here in Sophie. The main problem with performance here isn't the frame rate, but loading. There are a ton of loading sequences and you get them a lot. Fast travel, moving from one area to the other, sometimes when going out of battle and back to the field, alchemy. They're not terribly long, just frequent. That's all I've got with performance, so let's go into battery life. Atelier Sophie 2 gives the original model a range of 2 hours and 17 up to 2 hours and 52. The Nintendo Switch Lite gets a range of 2 hours and 23 up to 3 hours and 13. The Red Boxer V2 2019 model gets a range of 4 hours and 16 up to 5 hours and 28. And the OLED model gets a range of 4 hours and 30 up to 5 hours and 43. In conclusion, Sophie returns to the franchise in a colorful adventure that takes a lot that was set up in the original and creates a fun fantasy journey that, despite it taking place in the middle of the original trilogy, doesn't break any of its continuity. Now on the downside, load times do pop up quite often, but if you enjoyed Sophie or just want something more like Ryza with traditional turn-based combat, I had a ton of fun with it. Reviews to go rates Atelier Sophie 2 for the Nintendo Switch a 9 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.